Um, well, do we want to do this this door thing before we get to some more of these calls?
Yeah, let's get to Dore.
How should we set this up, man? I mean, like, look, Jimmy Dore is somebody who I think has just been trying to ride certain waves, and he was a big Bernie person for a bit, fell into, and then when that started to dry up or even just become crowded, started to pivot away from that. I think COVID. The thing is, like, COVID is, I think, very dominant in like his shit now. But like, we were worked up about Dore way before.
Oh yeah,
that.
I mean,
you might know the history because, like, I will be completely honest. Like, when I first, I know I've said this before, but when I first came on TMBS, like the Rubin and the Dore stuff, like I just couldn't like get into it or care, if I'm being completely honest. But over time, you realize, like, well, these people reach a lot of folks, and it is not good to have somebody who's speaking to basically, like, most people are mystified, right?
Yes.
In this society, like, you feel alienated, you feel like powerless,
Like
you feel like there's not a lot of political hope. You're being lied to. Then that's the correct position. What's so pernicious about some of these folks is that they don't try to speak to people's mystification, start to try to give them some clarity and encourage action, but rather just like continue the mystification, and direct it just to pure outrage and like devoted support to like some indie media platforms.
To him, yeah, it's cult. Don't do X out of fear. Like Dore's analysis of 2016 was that there's actually not a lot of difference, or actually there's zero difference to speak of between the Democrat and Republican parties, including whether who cares who puts Supreme Court justices in, who cares if one's Peter Thiel. What we really need to do, and this is the second half of the analysis that current Jimmy Dore defenders do not like to admit that he said, but he said we actually should allow the Republicans to win and be responsible for it, so we can go back to the Democrats and say, you need to go with the candidate we support. And the candidate that would be better following the loss and the success of Trump that Jimmy Dore put forward was Elizabeth Warren. So I just want to be very clear about like the analysis that he was putting forward there. It wasn't that like, okay, actually there's a lot of similarities between the Democrats and Republican because, surprise, both bourgeois capitalist parties, right? Like that shouldn't be a surprise to a lot of folks. But to say there is zero difference and that actually what we need is for us to take credit for Trump winning, which Jimmy Dore was nowhere to be found after Trump won, and saying we need to say, listen to us, get a progressive and like Elizabeth Warren. I mean, that was just nonsense. And he's been flailing.
To do that in service of Warren is so funny.
It's very funny. And it's something that people don't like to admit happened.
And also, like, look, I mean, I'll just be blunt about it. Like, a lot of this is like, how can I come up with like a semi-populist or, like a seemingly populist or progressive or left-wing like justification for supporting Republicans? I mean, like a lot of, and I think it's only got more explicit over the past couple of years.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing is like, it's very like there. I think like we spend a lot of time criticizing the Democratic Party, but there's a certain way that it's done where it's like it's also promoting whatever the day's agenda for the Republicans are. That I think as Dore realizes his audience is more and more right wing, he's going to do more and more, and that's why. Like, I don't know if maybe we'll get to it later, but the Dilbert clip is very revealing on that front.
Yeah, I mean. Okay, well, we have a couple of clips that we just like. I just saw these and I felt compelled to say something because, this stuff again, like it can really confuse folks because, like, look, we have like for example, our friend from Mexico on the show regularly for like a regular occurring segment, Kurt Hackbarth, to talk about how the New York Times is lying about AMLO. And we use those exact words, like these are lies, like this is purposeful misdirection, right? So like, there's tremendous amounts of truth to like a general media critique of like, yeah, corporate media like wants to muddy the waters, or if not, like just outright lie. There's an agenda behind a lot of this stuff. But there's a big difference between recognizing the kind of structural reasons why the New York Times and CNN, you can say all the acronyms you want, do the things that they do, like understanding those actual structural reasons and actually just becoming conspiratorial in a way that when you come across information or perspective that disagrees with what you think, then it's because it's a lie. And that's how you get yourself into a real mental trap. And you can go down a dark road really fast when you start thinking that way. So let's just play this clip here from Jimmy Dore.
It's Project Veritas. And people say, oh, you can't trust them, as if you can trust anybody else in the news business. Really? You can trust at New York Times? You could trust MSNBC and CNN, who've been spreading completely falsehoods at the top of their lungs.
We're going to play the rest of this, but like, I have to be like, quick on the points here on these, because what he's saying here is that, so New York Times, sometimes, the thing about the New York Times is like, sometimes it's like, it's lies through omission versus like just straight up fabricated stories. There's a huge gulf of difference, for example, between like, just using the AMLO stories that we've done, just because that's like a reference point that we have, between them saying that like AMLO is trying to reshuffle the Electoral Commission in Mexico. Right. Which, oh man, that sounds really bad. But as Kurt points out, it's like, well, it's because, these are unelected positions that are controlled by the right. So they're trying to make them, popularly elected so that the public can have more influence over these things. Right. That's a lie by omission. It's very powerful. That's more often than not is how the New York Times operates. Right. They use certain kinds of verbiage that sort of makes you associate things, consider things in a certain way. And then they omit critical information that sort of makes you understand the whole picture. That's very different than, for example, like just straight up out of whole cloth making up a story.
Yeah. Did you watch the Visor video? Sorry to interrupt, but did you watch this?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it.
Were you impressed?
But no.
Yeah. I mean, like, just to summarize for folks, this guy is on a date and he repeatedly says that's not exactly gain of function, which O'Keefe is trying to get him to admit. And like, it's a guy who like is supposedly some like director of research. But you can tell from the video that his like proximity to the like actual like real decision-making executives is very far away. And he's basically just like bullshitting on a date. This story, it's amazing because it looks so much more convincing when you see it written up in text, even by people who are trying to debunk it, than when you actually watch the fucking video that they put out.
Well, I mean, like the thing is with Project Veritas, for people who don't know it, like, it's a pure misinformation outlet. They've doctored videos in the past. They
edit the fuck out of this one too.
They edit the fuck out of them. They add music to make you feel a certain way. I mean, I'll never forget when out of college, I had like a brief like media internship with Al Arabiya, and they rented out this is 2015. Which is like, it was like Al Arabiya is like a Arabic English news organization, but like they rented out the fucking National Press Club to reveal some critical information about Hillary Clinton. And the critical information was that they sent agent, Project Veritas agent, to like a Hillary Clinton rally in like Buffalo or something. Oh, yeah. And they told the person at the merch table that they were Canadian and they bought a t-shirt, which violates campaign finance law because foreigners aren't allowed to directly donate to a candidate. And it was like the most nonsensical bullshit, story ever. But like, they put this out to be like, oh, look, there's foreigner. They're more than happy to have foreigners launder money. It's like, it's a volunteer who has no idea about what's going on. When they get that woman to say like, oh, we're happy to take money from people from every country. We gotta win. It's like, that's not a like, fuck Hillary Clinton. Right. But like, that's not like a reflection of like the Clinton campaign. Or another one, like before January J20, the anti-Trump protests in DC, they showed up at like at a meeting And then they got some people beers after, and it's like young people who are like excited about being anti-Trump, and they got them to say, we're going to blow up, like the train station and, all this kind of bravado shit. Be like, oh, look, this is what Antifa is planning on doing. It's like, and it's just like a 17-year-old who's like, stoked, or I hope they weren't 17 if they were pumping them with booze, but never know with them.
But this guy, this is like you get the ball boy, maybe like assistant offensive coordinator to say like, yeah, we're really going to be doing a lot of play action, and it's like, you don't fucking know, man. Like, but yeah, go ahead.
But the point here is that, so like, yes, the New York Times and all these other media outlets do things that are unethical. They put arguments out there that are nasty, and they do lies by omission. But to say the New York Times does lies by omission, therefore what we're getting from Project Veritas is somehow like valid or reasonable. I mean, like, you have to be able to understand that there's a big difference between a purely like duplicitous, like misinformation product, like what's coming out from Project Veritas, and people trying to patchwork together certain amounts of facts and like specific reporting on different events to give a certain narrative of understanding, right? Like, they're both bad in like a general sense, in like that they're, misleading people, but there's a huge gulf of difference between somebody like literally trying to like make something into something that it's not, like this Pfizer video or all the other Veritas things, and like a neoliberal anti-AMLO journalist, trying to paint AMLO as like a dictator, right? These are different things. They're bad, but you're making a false equivalence when you say, because the New York Times does bad things, therefore all of the other misinformation that's out there is somehow good. But anyway, we can. Exactly. There's more here. But I just want to make that really clear, because it's really sneaky how the thing is, like, the thing with Dore, though, is like, I might be giving him too much credit because it's like, oh, he's sneaky, like he's got a plan. He's just riffing the whole fucking time. It's like, it's ad lib. It's ad lib. You put in any subject in front of him, he'd say the same thing.
And all of them.
I'm going to say Project Veritas has a better hit rate than MSNBC.
Every single non-reliable source has a better accuracy.
I mean, fucking do the work on that then, Kurt and Jimmy. Do a study. All right, take a slice of all their programming and see it. Like, I mean, that's like, there's shit on MSNBC. That's why none of us fucking watch it.
and again, like, lie by omission. Look, in fairness, you can't for every comment that you make go down like, here's the facts, right? I get that. But if you notice, it's always just like, you just say the names of the big ones, right? You say MSNBC, CNN, New York Times. And like, that's the argument. It's like, oh, those are big ones, I should feel bad about them. And I'm just going to accept whatever the fuck you're saying after that. It's like, look, New York Times, like, that has like legit reporters on the ground too, that do write things down, interview people, and whatever. Like, you can always make arguments about why are they picking what they're picking, blah, blah, blah. But like, again, there's a huge difference.
Jimmy Dore will cite the New York Times or the Atlantic if they say COVID isn't a big deal, get your ass back to school. Like, he's all over it. Like, even they say it now. Like,
Right. Including Alex Jones. Including Alex Jones is way more accurate than Rachel Maddow. Way more, especially when it comes to Russiagate.
The New York Times is one of the most
unbelievably
you remember Orson Welles'
unfactual pieces of publication in the New York Times.
But again, like, Rachel Maddow, Russiagate stuff was awful. I mean, they were putting out shit that was just nonsensical, like absolutely nonsensical. Alex Jones talks about lizard people. Right. It's just like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, oh, Rachel Maddow does bad reporting on a lot of things, and she does bad reporting on Russiagate in particular, because that was like the business model. Alex Jones just straight up like makes up shit. Talked about people were practicing like ritual cannibalism. Right. Which was insane.
And this is a good important point, because the point is, neither Jimmy Dore or Rachel Maddow give a fuck about you. Like, they do not, like,
or Alex,
or Alex, like, and Jim, and particularly Jimmy in this case, like, that you would say, well, fine, like, throw your hands up, because I think, like, as somebody who, for whatever fucking reason, like, we gather attention online, and we are able to direct it to different places, and to direct that into a place, whether it's Rachel Maddow or Alex Jones, you have to not give a fuck about the person you're directing in order to do that.
it just like what's frustrating to me about I mean, there's a lot of things that are frustrating to me about Dore, but like one thing that is really frustrating to me about him is that like there's like the continuation of the cynicism that's out there, and it's like, look, it's very reasonable to be cynical. Yeah. It's very reasonable to mistrust the powers that be. Yeah. But what Jimmy Dore does with that is he's selling you a false reality.
Yeah.
Versus like, not to put us up on a pedestal or something, like what we do is like, the world's fucked. There's a lot of people who are trying to tell you a lot of nonsense about it. Here's how we understand things. And also, a big difference between, I think, our program and a lot of other programs that do this is like, we tell people what you should do is you should like meet up with other like-minded people and join an organization and engage in politics. We never say, you have to subscribe to us and keep watching this because this is the only place that you're going to get true information for. Because one, that's self-serving, and two, it's wrong. Right? It's like, this is like I think what we do has a lot of value, is important. But it's only a part of like a big constellation of trying to build a movement. And you really should be wary of some of these folks who are like, tune in, this is it. This is I'm giving you the marching orders and like the true understanding, instead of like a real trying to like equip you with some information so that you can understand the world a little bit better.
I mean, watch the Nexium NXIVM documentary. I believe it's on HBO, maybe it's on Netflix. Yeah. And listen to the way they say, oh, you're just being controlled through fear, when people come to them with criticisms of the cult. And tell me you don't hear that from Jimmy Dore.
No, Tom, and like I see people like from my previous lives, like growing up, who I've seen get completely wrapped up in the Jimmy shit.
Yeah,
and that's when I realized that like it's more than just like a kind of passing, like, oh, we got to dunk on the moron.
Yeah,
and realize like, well, these are people who come from the same neighborhoods as I do, poor working class communities, and like they're frustrated with the world around them, and they're trying to figure out a way, to make sense of a world that is alienating, a world that can feel confusing, and have some kind of understanding of what's going on around them. It's like Dore just like, you come to Dore for help and he just fucking shoves your face in the mud.
Yeah,
is what this shit is. We have another one if you want to keep teeing off.
Yeah, which one is it? Oh, is this Dilbert?
I think so.
Yeah, that's
a short one.
This is a genius brainwave here. And I just want to say real quick, like, if you are a Jimmy Dore listener, or even if you're someone who's like, he might have something about these vaccines, you come to the right place, because we're actually going to address a lot of this stuff. Go ahead.
First of all, most of the anti-vaxxers are not anti-vax.
Right.
That was just an insult for people who got injured and they didn't keep their mouths shut. That's what that was. So if you're a critical thinker, he calls you anti-vax. If you if you are properly skeptical of big pharma and the government that's captured by big pharma, then you're an anti-vaxxer. You're not a critical thinker.
Pause just 1 second. I mean, this isn't the one I was thinking of, but like Jimmy is an anti-vaxxer. He has said that he regrets getting the vaccine. Now, we've said, and we've talked with Eric Osgood about this, that in a very limited number of any vaccine rollout, particularly whether it's specific grades for things like measles, or whether it's a worldwide thing, there are like vaccine injuries are a thing that happens, and it's something that we actually do monitor. And the solution to that isn't, oh, we shouldn't be vaccinated. It should be, if there is something like that, you have Medicare for all. Congratulations, go down to the hospital, get it looked at. Now, he also promotes all this stuff about sudden death. That is absolutely, one, bullshit, and two, an obscuring of their culpability, because a lot of these heart things, I want to put this up, because this data is coming out now, and this is why my theory of why Jimmy is leaning into it a little bit much is because I think the information that actually shows how irresponsible these folks have been towards the exact people that they've been claiming to be speaking for. This is a cardiac deaths. And you see here 18 to 39. So exactly like the people like Joe Rogan talk about. You see cardiac respiratory, what do they call it? Circulatory system deaths rise with the virus itself. and then level off when people start getting vaccinated. So what we have here, contrary to the suddenly died Damar Hamlin bullshit, is the thing that, as I talked to Eric Osgood, like COVID attacks not just your lungs, but also your vascular system. And I don't think it's that many, because I think these are rare, these sort of cardiovascular events. But it's still folks who would have been better off having been vaxxed. Now, I'm not quadruple vaxxed. I am 3 times vaxxed. And so like, this isn't the thing where it's like, oh, you have to say, no, I follow This Week in Virology. I followed a few other people who are expert on that. And like, it's basically just, I haven't gotten around to it. And the reason I haven't gotten around to it is because for somebody,
it's still
like,
free.
for someone like us, well, it was when I checked, but that's a good question. But for me, like, and somebody in my age group, and this is what this is not suppressed information as Jimmy Dore would want to have you. This is something people just actually talk about, saying like, actually, you're good. 3 doses is actually very, very good protection. You're really slicing a thin risk slice beyond that. That said, when I had a risk that I might have been exposed to COVID like a month ago, I was not thinking shit. I've never regretted the vaccination I've got, and I was thinking, damn, I kind of wish I would have gotten around to having that one, right? So like this entire conversation that I just had, that one is one you have access to in places like, I mean, even the fucking New York Times, right? Like all these places that Dore says do not trust, that is like things they talk about, just as a matter of fact. So like this whole censorship narrative is bullshit. It is true you can get demonetized on YouTube and have your shit canned by the algorithms, which we're risking again this time. But that's the problem of like YouTube being like, oh, we don't want to look back on this pandemic and realize we became a major vehicle for people getting horrible medical advice and putting their internal organs at risk.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the vax stuff. I mean, I think nothing made it clear what the end game here is. It's just getting views and money.
And there's anxiety out there. But it's like, to me, and we talked about this before, like it's wild to me. If you're worried about your heart just randomly stopping, it's going to be COVID that does it. Like that's the thing that the thing you should be worried about. And it's also weird to like, first of all, and let me just address the lab leak stuff, because I've never been someone who has discounted that entirely. Like, I just don't know. This is outside of my remit. I do know a lot of the early caution was against people using it to basically blast China and get us in
people.
Like
attack American
Chinese people. Well, that too, and the sort of like populist racism there, and also like the warmongering sort of thing there too. So there's like a little bit of a mismatch between. First of all, I do think we should have full transparency between what like laboratories are doing, and I think like the pharmaceutical companies should be nationalized. There's their solution.
This is. I mean, this is again. This is what the fundamental, like it's. I focused on one side, but like, let's look at the other one. What's so damaging about the Doors and their like downstream people is that by also like making any kind of questioning or investigation into certain things like their niche, they like immediately discredit it for a lot of people because the ones who are popularizing or looking into these things are such quacks. It makes it really difficult for us, and like even dropping the COVID stuff, just like taking anti-war positions. I mean, there's a whole segment of like a kind of progressive left that absolutely refuses to this day to take seriously questions of de-escalation of the war between Russia and Ukraine, because there is a segment of the like media sphere online predominantly that has sort of made that their shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's incredibly damaging. I think to like, the thing is like, these guys are all cynical, right? But it's incredibly damaging to even like, if they were to be serious about pushing for any of these things, it's incredibly damaging to to their movement on like in the public square to act in the way that they do, because it completely discredits a lot of these subjects in the eyes of a significant part of the progressive left movement.
If I was pharmaceutical companies, I would be funneling cash towards Joe Rogan, Brett Weinstein, Jimmy Dore.
No, totally.
Saying actually the solution to this is prophylactic use of ivermectin, $25 a month. You're fucking welcome, Merck. And also they're bashing technology as unsafe that actually is saving lives. And we actually have the data here to do it. And let me tell you something, they're not fucking sweating. They do, because the sudden death shit, all this stuff, that's not real. And so it's not going to last. And so like, part of me thinks, Jimmy, this is the dirt you bury yourself with. Because like you ain't gonna win this, man. Like and Brett Weinstein, who's got his own plagiarism thing going on right now, somebody who's Brett like you guys, they fucked up. And the truth is, like, if you are between 18 and 39 and you are double vaxxed, you're good. And you should, and do not worry if fucking Jimmy Dore tells you might die actually, because you and also like that's fucking despicable, man. To be,
and they all have it. They all, the majority of them also are double vaxxed too.
I will say, I will grant that I do think there's a small chance that Dore had a weird reaction to the vax, or he simultaneously had COVID with it. Who knows what happened going on? But I think he might have had an actual event. Maybe this is giving him too much credit, but I also know, like, before this whole COVID stuff, like I knew somebody who had like seizures because of vaccination when they were younger, and those people, and this is why I talked to Eric Osgood about like actually getting people who know about vaccine harms with the responsible public health message, and which is not this, and which isn't frankly serviced by just basically granting him all of that ground. Because even if Jimmy is lying about having a vaccine injury, there are people who like are looking for anything, and there's a lot of anxiety about it. So like that's just one thing I do want to push out there. The other thing though, I got one more video I do want to play, and this was put up by our good buddy Nitsky89. This is from January 11th, 2022. So just over a year ago now. And I want to put this in the context of some subsequent data.
Big debate about whether they should open the schools because of COVID and because Omicron is so much more contagious. Omicron, the symptoms of Omicron are very mild, and they're like a cold. And a lot of people are saying that's good because that signals the end of the pandemic, because now we're going to become endemic, and now it will just circulate, and the symptoms that it will present with are those.
Let's be clear about who wants this. And of course, like a certain level of return to normalcy is desired by everybody. But National Restaurant Association, people like that's who really wants to make, and not only return to normal, but also not know the risks that people are facing when they return to normal.
Those have a cold, even though it's not, it's the Omicron cold. So everybody's shitting their pants about kids having to go to school are just repeating propaganda from big pharma funded establishment news. Congratulations. Do you know the damage that is done to kids not being socialized in schools? We don't even know.
We know some of that now, which is that there were less suicides. Now, I am somebody who is very pro public schools, but you will not see Jimmy Dore come up with that metric that actually says that there was an upside to the getting out of schools. Now, people fell behind in terms of attainment, but those problems should be addressed by the same reasons any kid falls behind in attainment, is getting public schools funded fully.
I'm just put my cards on the table, Matt. Like, I'm somebody who thinks that like a lot of significant damage was done, to kids with this. And I think that it's not something that we should trivialize, but like the thing that's frustrating to me about Dore and the right is that like, if that's the case, that I think it probably is, then we should have been doing everything that we could to make schools as safe and like, as like a collective, making that kind of like sacrifice. But instead, it was like haphazard after the fact. Oh, the teachers' unions are being whiny and annoying, right?
What's he
like
exactly? He's saying like you're taking it too seriously. Get your ass back in there. It's not like we need to have filtration. And also, in case there is a surge, which is what happened in January 2022, maybe we go back down. And the other thing, like I agree, but I also think that is very income dependent. So you have poor and less white communities that were actually more pro, let's shut it down because we don't know what the fuck's happening. Because guess what? If that disease comes into my home, it's different than if it comes into Jimmy Dore's multi-million-dollar Beverly Hills mansion. But
because people, for people who don't get to be home workers, I mean, like work out from home people, that could be really devastating to a family. No, I mean, I totally agree. What I'm saying is that like, I don't discredit the argument that like, I think what we did with schools in this country was a disaster. Not necessarily shutting them down at the outset, but like I don't think that we did enough when we decided to reopen them to take care of people, and I don't think we took seriously enough that like if there was anything to sort of as a community like sacrifice for and to look out for, it should have been making sure that kids have the ability to socialize, and like there wasn't any of that. It was after the fact bullshit, and very class tiered too.
It would be things like, okay, we expect a surge coming, which we do see these things coming. We do, and we agree that school is a priority to keep open. Then you start talking about, okay, well maybe we do close gyms again for this period of time, but that is a conversation that's entirely short circuited when you say, oh, it's just the fucking cold. Just get your ass out there.
No, exactly.
But it's great. And the Chicago Public Schools Teacher Union are so fear-mongered, they just voted to end in-person school. They are at a higher risk of contracting the Omicron cold. Yes. Yeah. They are at a less risk for severe disease. So what you're saying is we're using the word risk now to describe the symptoms of a cold.
So we have information, and just to be clear, Jimmy Dore, who says he doesn't like the mainstream media or the official health authorities, he was so gassed up on that because of an article that David Wallace Wells wrote in June the year earlier based on CDC info. We have newer info, including this from a guy, Eric Topol, and it really shows what that highly contagious Omicron and getting back to normal without, like what David said, the filtration and that sort of stuff. We killed kids. Here's this, make this a little bit bigger here. You look at for the first year, let's not go too far yet, April to 2020 to 2021, this is year the lockdowns, not a whole lot of COVID deaths. We've reopened, and it became one of the leading causes of death among individuals aged 0 to 19. People might notice this tallest one here, which shows over 150 monthly COVID deaths of U.S. kids. That was the exact month Jimmy Dore was scolding the Chicago Teachers Union, saying they're too fear-mongered by Fauci. And to me, I have a little bit of a tolerance for, the heterodox thinker and willing to ask these questions. When you start attacking teachers unions in the middle of a labor fight where they're trying to look out for the safety of their workers, it's indefensible. That clip where he says the Chicago teachers were fear-mongered by Fauci, I knew when he said it, when I first saw it, like, you fucked up. But the extent to which he fucked up, it wasn't that clear to me. I thought it was just like, you don't do this shit. But it actually, there's dead kids on it. So like that, and again, his perspective was not the one that he was running about, like, it's just a flu. That was in the Atlantic. Like, that's out there. Because guess what? That's what capital wants. It doesn't want you to actually think about what this is doing to my vascular system, what might be the long-term effects. And I do think there might, like, don't want to get into like the DSA is, has blood on its hands for moving on from COVID sort of hysterics that we get out there. But like, that is the agenda of like Joe Biden. Joe Biden's given Dore and all these sort of like, let's not take it seriously, pretty much what they want. So I don't know how they even differentiate themselves anymore.
Yeah. Dore's bad, y'all. Jimmy Dore is not good.
No.